Let's jump out of the D&M Leasing Hotline and welcome to the program from the Jen, Gabe, and Chewy show over there on ESPN Milwaukee, the morning show. Mr. Gabe Neitzel and Gabe, are y'all as geeked in Green Bay for this game on Sunday, or as melancholy as the folks here in Dallas are for Sunday night's performance?
Yeah, look, I think everybody's geeked just because, A, Micah Parsons and the opportunity to watch him on the field on Sundays has been a pleasure through the first 3 weeks. And B, I think everybody's excited because, well, the Packers offense wasn't very good, and that Dallas defense the last couple of weeks has made some guys look pretty good, from Russell Wilson to Caleb Williams. So I think it's it's twofold in terms of the excitement up here in Wisconsin for the game on Sunday.
Pleasure having you on. What do you think would be the Packers' defensive game plan with this Cowboys offense looking a little different than it did in Week 1? No CeeDee Lamb. I don't think anyone outside of Javonte Williams' family expected him to be good as he's been this year.
And Fred Davis.
Is it going to be stopping the run game? Is it still the threat of Dak and George Pickens and Jake Ferguson? What do you think is kind of their mindset going into this matchup?
Yeah, I think it's going to be stopping that run first, just because they feel pretty good about their ability to get after the quarterback, even if they only rush 4. I mean, we've seen it through the first 3 weeks, even last week, in the loss to Cleveland. The Packers are able to generate pressure because, as you guys know, teams have to account for Micah Parsons. There was one of the sacks last week that Rashawn Gary, who currently leads the league in sacks, went completely unblocked. The Browns were so concerned about what Micah might do, they just decided to let Rashawn Gary run free, and he was able to get to Joe Flacco. So with the way they've been able to generate pressure with Micah Parsons, I feel like their focus is, hey, let's make sure we stop the run, because we're going to be able to generate pressure, and whoever we have on the back end, whether it's Keyshawn Nixon, who's played really well, or Carrington Valentine, a 7th-round pick from a couple of years ago for the Packers, they feel comfortable in that they're going to be able to defend and cover for as long as they have to, which isn't very long with the way the Packers are able to get after QBs.
I just want an outsider's POV on this, and I urge you to be as candid as possible with this. George Pickens being the wide receiver 1 for the Cowboys right now with CeeDee Lamb sideline, are teams still, afraid of George Pickens, see him as a field bender, see him as a game breaker, or do they see him as a wide receiver 2 that's just stepping into a wide receiver 1 role?
He's a wide receiver 2 stepping into a wide receiver 1 role, but the one thing that Pickens has is the speed. Like, you always have to respect that speed. And I think the Packers have had, kind of defenses looked at them similarly in years past with Christian Watson, who's hurt right now and still coming back from his ACL, so he won't be on the field, on Sunday. But I think teams have kind of looked at Christian Watson similarly. He's probably not a wide receiver 1, but the game-breaking speed is always something that you have to respect and maybe keep an eye on. And obviously it's a little bit easier to keep an eye on and maybe have, some safeties kind of peek over at where George Pickens is when CeeDee Lamb's also not on the field. But that's the one thing I would say everybody has to respect with George Pickens is that speed that he has.
Gabe Neitzel, ESPN Milwaukee, joining us here talking all things Green Bay, Dallas on Sunday. Jordan Love, I'm depending upon who you talk to, you either love him or hate him. I don't know that there's any in between with Jordan Love. And, through the first 2 weeks, all the Jordan Love, supporters like, hey, see, this is the guy we told you could be a Super Bowl quarterback. And then all the Jordan Love detractors and haters came out after the Cleveland game and said, see, this is why you'll never win a Super Bowl with Jordan Love. Where are you at on this complicated relationship? And kind of how is this offense with Jordan Love coming off of now what you guys have had 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks?
Yeah, and look, I think the Packers fans relationship is kind of the same way. It seems like people love him or hate him, and more people are on the side of believing in Jordan Love, I would say, up here, but there's still some of those that have their doubts, and a game like Sunday certainly doesn't help. And look, I don't want to make excuses for Jordan. The Packers' offensive line on Sunday was awful. It was terrible. Did not give him any chance, and I think that's kind of what led to the crucial interception that he threw. That's a play where the line actually did a pretty good job of protecting him. If he holds on to the ball just a half beat longer, I think he sees, the defender who ended up making the interception and Delpit there, and he's able to throw it to his tight end, Tucker Kraft, the guy that Delpit had kind of abandoned to make that interception. What was a great play, but Jordan kind of felt like he had to get rid of the football, and that's the one thing he has to clean up. I think Jordan can be a really good quarterback. I think he could be one you can win a Super Bowl with, but he has a propensity to have some confusing throws, some confusing turnovers. There was a throw he made against the Lions that nobody notices other than us up here in Green Bay. he just kind of lobbed it out into the flat. I don't know if he was trying to throw it away. The only possible player who could have caught it was a member of the Detroit Lions, and Anzalone, one of the linebackers, who fortunately dropped it for Jordan, and his interception-less streak was able to continue. But there seemed to be, some issues with him once or twice a game, kind of making confusing throws where you're like, wait, things are going pretty well. What just happened? How did this just happen? And if he cleans that up, this Packers offense can fully realize the potential that they have. If he doesn't, that's going to be something that kind of holds them back, because I feel with Micah Parsons right now, they have a championship-level defense, and that's up here in Green Bay. A championship-level defense is something we haven't had in forever, and the offense was always ahead of the defense when we had Aaron Rodgers. But right now, Jordan Love has to raise his level of play if the Packers do want to be a Super Bowl contender and champion.
The Packers are bottom 5 in pass attempts per game at 26. The Dallas Cowboys are number 1 in the league at pass attempts per game at 43.7. Who do you see bending their game plan more to match the game flow as far as not passing the ball or passing the ball more?
I think it's going to be the Packers, because they want to run the football. It's a pivot they made last year when Jordan got hurt, and they had to go to Malik Willis, their backup quarterback. They started running the ball a ton, and they had acquired Josh Jacobs last year, who can be that bell cow, and they were a team that ran the ball 52% of the time last year, and I think that's something they wanted to do. But right now, Josh Jacobs is off to a rough start. It's a combination of him. It's a combination of the line. There's a next-gen stats, rushing yards over expected, which kind of, factors in how well your offensive line is playing, and it just kind of tries to isolate the running back. And right now, he's dead last among starting running backs with Josh Jacobs. So they certainly want to get him going. But at the same time, if their offensive line is beat up and he's not running the ball that efficiently, I'm thinking Matt LaFleur might try to take advantage of that Dallas secondary that other quarterbacks have been able to take advantage of, whether it was, again, Russell Wilson 2 weeks ago or it was Caleb Williams last week. I would expect the Packers to try to air it out, get Tucker Kraft, their talented tight end, who had 100 yards against the Commanders involved, and maybe get their number 1 pick in Matthew Golden out of Texas, get him really going and kind of have his first big game in the NFL.
All right, that's good stuff right there. The Green Bay Packers have a good amount of injuries, a lot of guys limited, a lot of guys DNP. I think we saw Zach Tom not expected to play. Outside of him and Micah being limited with the back, is there anybody on the injury report that you're concerned won't be able to suit up Sunday? Or if they do suit up, you see the Cowboys kind of looking at that position or player to kind of exploit maybe a guy coming back from injury?
Yeah, so for the Packers, it's not just Zach Tom, it's Aaron Banks, who they spent a lot of money on this offseason. He was a day one free agent signing that they gave a bunch of money to play left guard. And he came over from the 49ers, and he just hasn't been healthy. So it's for the Packers' offensive line, it's a combination of their best offensive lineman and Zach Tom, who, he's not going to play after trying to go with an oblique injury and only being able to play one play against Cleveland. And then Aaron Banks, who's dealt with back, ankle, and now a groin injury. And if he doesn't go, the Packers' offensive line depth gets pretty sketchy pretty quick. Anthony Belton, who was their second-round pick, also has not practiced this week. He's been somebody they've put in for Zach Tom at right tackle before. Jordan Morgan, their first-round pick from a year ago, has kind of rotated around and hasn't played all that well. So, I mean, the Packers' offensive line, as much of a concern as it was against a great front for the Browns last week, I think it's just as much of a concern because it's so beat up and injured going into this game. That's kind of the biggest injury concern I would say right now for the Packers is how do they hold up front, because their offensive line depth just hasn't really shown that it can step up when guys go down.
Well, fortunately for you guys, we were saying the same thing about the Bears reserve offensive lineman, and Caleb Williams went out and had the greatest game in Chicago Bear history. So
no sacks.
I don't know that could be as big of an issue. Real quick, and just because I'm a weirdo, look, where are we at with the Bucs? At the end of the year, okay, is Giannis going to leave? And then he decided, he basically didn't say a word, right? And then you will go out and get Miles Turner, which I think had half the NBA flummoxed. Doc Rivers, how he continues to get jobs is anybody's guess.
Let go of Dame.
You let go of Dame, which I'm not as that I kind of get to an extent. I mean, he was 35. He blew out his Achilles. What are you going to get from him? But what do you make of this Milwaukee team?
Yeah, it's. As long as Giannis is in Milwaukee, I feel like the Bucks are going to be an interesting team, and they're going to have the ball in his hands a ton, especially after trading Dame away. And it kind of seems like the Bucks and Dame were going to be headed for a divorce.
Yeah.
Even if he doesn't blow out his Achilles, and then they have to take the big time risk of waving and doing the wave
stretch.
And extend. Yeah, the stretch over the next 5 years with the amount of money that they ultimately owed him. So that's going to be interesting to see how they navigate that. And the one thing the Bucs have done is they are going to be as desperate as they can to try to do everything they can to try to stay competitive while Giannis is here, because they know, all the picks in the world that they get, if they were to ever trade him, you're probably not getting another Giannis Antetokounmpo out of that. So they want to maximize Giannis as much as they can. And it seems like, yeah, we'll worry about that future without Giannis whenever it comes. Until then, the Bucs are going to turn over every stone to try to make sure that they remain competitive. Their goal this year was to get younger, and I think that's exactly what they did this offseason. Whether that results into them being as competitive as they want to be in an Eastern Conference that's going to be pretty beat up this year with other teams that are dealing with some pretty devastating injuries of their own, that remains to be seen. But I think with Giannis, they're going to be a team that's worth paying attention and is – we'll see an unleashed Giannis, I think, who's going to be averaging pretty close to a triple-double with the ball in his hands quite a bit this year.
Who do you see giving him help, though? Because, who's going to step into that? I mean, I get it. They're going to have Miles Turner kind of be that, be their Brook Lopez this year. But, who's going to be that guy that Dame just never quite ended up being?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a combination of different people.
Okay.
They've tried to just surround him with as many shooters as possible. Just, again, put the ball in his hands and try to kick it out. Gary Trent Jr., somebody who shot the ball incredibly well last year. They're very high on A.J. Green and being a shooter. So they just want to, again, which is why the whole Kyle Kuzma thing is just very confusing because he's not a very good shooter. Right. But and I think what they're kind of hoping is that they can maybe rehab him and maybe trade him this trade deadline or next off season if they can try to get him to be a somewhat productive player and try to get some sort of shooter and defender in return. That's the one piece that doesn't make a ton of sense right now for the Bucs after acquiring him last trade deadline. But they've just tried to acquire as many shooters as possible and try to make that work as best they can with Giannis.
All right, get you out here with this. Who wins on Sunday night and why?
I think it's the Packers. I just think that Cowboys defense is really hurting, and Micah's going to be motivated. And I think that the Cowboys are going to be motivated to try to slow him down, and other teams have already shown, hey, you start paying too much attention to Micah Parsons, the Packers have enough talent on that defense, enough speed on that defense to make you, hey, you're not paying attention to me over here. I'm going to still be able to get after your quarterback. And honestly, with CeeDee Lamb going down, that just makes it even more difficult for the Cowboys to try to score points and keep up with what I think the Packers offense is going to be able to do in a bounce back game.
Gabe, fantastic stuff from you, my friend. Enjoy the game on Sunday night. Tell the folks I went real fast where they can find you at on the Twitters and socials.
Yeah, at Gabe Neitzel 16. If you're ever curious about what's going on up here in Wisconsin, just give us a listen on the ESPN Wisconsin app. Jen, Gabe, and Jen Latta, who works on ESPN's College Game Day, and then Mark Chmura, a former Packer who went to the Pro Bowl a few times, took on the Cowboys in the 90s, and won a Super Bowl with the Packers. So check us out on ESPN Milwaukee.
Gabe, appreciate you. We'll do this again when the NBA season gets underway.
Yeah, looking forward to it, boys.